everybody. Welcome back to the TEMSEA Leadership Podcast, Part 2. You are joining us here today with the conclusion of the interview with me and my son, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome back, everybody, to the TEMSEA Leadership Podcast. If you're tuning in to episode 2, we're doing something right.
Agreed. This has been fun.
Okay, so that first episode, we tackled your story.
Yeah.
We tackled your first book, how you came to write that. We tackled your second book, how you came to write that.
Yeah.
We haven't talked a lot about your second book, though.
Yeah.
And so this episode is primarily going to be us jumping in to your second book.
Yeah.
And retracting some practical, information out of that and practical tips that hopefully you will be able to take home.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's jump right in.
Let's do it, man. I'm excited.
Rachel actually has a piece in the new book.
Yes.
I may actually have a piece in the new book.
You do.
Mom may have a little piece in the new book.
That's a surprise for everybody listening.
Boom, boom, boom. That in and of itself, you should go check it out just because of that. It's unique. But Rachel uses the term in her little chapter, letting them in.
Yeah.
Letting them in. And she what she means by that is letting your family into your healing, into your problems, into your struggles.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you say in the book, you say, recognize that you have the power to shape the direction of a relationship. And I don't really think you can navigate a relationship in neither party unless you're open to that other party.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, just out of curiosity, how do you balance between not telling your family the struggles you went through, especially on the PTSD side, and then being open and just being an open book for them? So just describe and explain your view of how you should be open with your family.
Well, let me start by saying this. When you have a bad day at work, it is not an excuse to treat your family bad. It's not. And I'm passionate about that. And I think why I'm so passionate about that, because that wasn't me while I was going through the journey. So let me just be very, very clear. So this is what I mean by that, Chris, and you can ask more questions, is that we all have bad days at work. My days look a little different now because I'm more in the administrative role. Your mom's has bad days because of what she does. You have a bad days. Rachel Paxton, her husband, has bad days. Is that it's okay. So like if I am coming home and I'm having a bad day, it is my responsibility to engage, to say, I had a terrible day. I need a timeout. I need to go gather my thoughts so I don't say things that I don't need to say or hurt somebody's feelings. So that is what I mean. But I think what has happened over the years is I have a sensitivity that if you have a bad day, you're a freshman at college, you're figuring this thing out. I know when I talk with you, if you have a bad day, that is not the time to engage in certain conversations with you. I let you have that bad day, and I'm more of a, what do you need? And you may need to vent. Maybe it's, hey, go get some rest, maybe encouraging you, and then come back, 2, 3, 4 hours later or the next day. So that's kind of what I mean by that.
Yeah. Were you open about PTSD with Mom just as soon as it happened? Or were you closed off, and what would your advice be on that front?
Yeah, so I was open with her a little bit when I knew that I was in trouble. So I sat down with her and I talked with her. It scared her. I didn't tell her all of the thoughts that I was having. And however, I'm very forthcoming about information. Now, if I'm bothered by something and I struggle with something, we'll sit down and it will be private. Like I said, like, hey, I'm kind of having a bad season. I'm having a bad string of days at work. So yes, I do think it's important because I think we think we can hide it, and our family knows something's going on.
Right.
you think you're hiding your challenges, you're not. People know, but sometimes people are not confrontational, so they're not going to approach that person. But if you think you're hiding it, you're doing damage. It's being recognized. You're changing, and you're being naive if you don't think. Now, don't use it as an excuse, but the way that I re-enter conversations and challenges now is making sure the timing is right. And use the example of your mom and just say, hey, I need to talk to you when she's not distracted, and say, like, I really need to sit down and talk to you. And that happened several years ago. There was a string of pediatric deaths that I was seeing at the hospital, and it was Christmas time. Your mom freaks out over Christmas, doesn't she?
Yeah.
I mean, she's all over Christmas. It's her favorite time, and I am emotionally spent. And she comes in one day and she's like, how was your day? And I mean, she's buzzing like she does every year. And this was my comment, and it was very soft. And I paused and I said, if I never see a dead kid again, I'll be okay. That froze her. She was like, are you okay? And I said, I'm okay, but I just need you to know where I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's been a terrible couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So that's how I approach that now.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that is in reference to family, immediate family.
Yeah.
But how has your circle of influence, your circle of friends, your community, just in general, contributed to your healing? And was it absent when you first dealt with PTS and thought intrusions?
Yeah, 100% absent. And I think there could be some reasons for that. Probably it wasn't intentional. I didn't have a relationship that was designed. And in hindsight, I would have, especially with my partner in Lee, who's in the room, who's kind of the editor and the producer of this podcast. We were partners for many years. And if I had to go back with that, I probably would have intentionally had the conversation with him and say, Lee, listen, we're partners. We live together more than we are at home, it seems. I probably had the conversation, listen, if we're having a tough time, we just need to agree that we're going to talk to each other. I would have done that now, where before it wasn't that intentional. But today I have a group of friends that I literally could call, and this is how powerful this is, and by design. There's a lot of trust there, Chris, that Lee would be an example. I could call him, and we did rescue together in some very difficult situations, and we had this saying is for real, meaning we're not joking, like this is a for real situation. And I could call him and I could say, Lee, I need to talk to you right now for real. Like, it's kind of like everything goes away. What do you need? And so I feel fortunate, and it's intentional though, Chris, that I have the relationships with certain individuals. There's only a few of them. And that I've trusted with my life in the past that I could open up to and not feel ashamed. Yeah. And I've done that. So I think it's part of the pride to know that I have a group of individuals that I could reach out to say, I need you now. This is what I'm struggling with. Here's the powerful thing with these individuals, Chris. They have mastered listening, and they don't try to solve the problem. They are so attentive in listening. And sometimes when you listen to someone, it clarifies, that person that's talking to you clarifies the thoughts without you even giving any advice. And I feel like I've learned that with sharing my story, where people have come up and I've listened to them and they know the answers. It was a safe place, and I feel like those relationships are very, very safe. So to answer your question, yes, it is different for me today, but it's still me. Like, I still have to be the one to recognize I have to make the call.
Right. There's a great deal of vulnerability that comes with that. There's a great deal of confidence that comes with that
100%.
Because if you're not confident, and if you're not humble enough to make that first phone call, you're not gonna get healing that you would at the rate if you did.
Yep.
And so you also say in the book, the company you keep shapes who you become.
Yeah.
So that circle of community, like you said, you have to make sure they are a listening group of people.
100%.
they have to seek understanding before they speak up. It's not just like your average Joe. Like these are
high performers.
These are high performers that you particularly chose.
I
right?
chose.
So,
These are the Pro Bowl players
yeah.
that walk it. Like
Right.
they walk the walk.
Yeah. So how would you give advice to somebody to choose a community? Maybe that's absent for them right now, like
Yeah.
it was back then for you.
Yeah.
How do they find that community?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I want to share this with you. Is that this is all about being mentored? I'll use it from a leadership strategy standpoint. I didn't have mentors in the beginning, like I really didn't, and I have a lot of them now, but it's partly because of how I've grown. So my mentors and the people that I got guidance from were the books
Yeah.
and the podcasts that I listened to that were people that were successful. That's how it started for me. And then it was almost like the input changed my output. Then I started gaining credibility, not intentionally, but that's how I started attracting those individuals. So you may not have that circle, but you have a lot of resources
Right.
that literally can help you. And maybe it's journaling. And maybe it is building a relationship in the community outside of work with people that are trust. Maybe it's your a friend of the family that that has gone through some struggles and challenges or successful in business, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You have to search for these individuals, but it's not a quick phone call with a stranger and say, I need you to be in my circle. Like it takes time,
Yeah.
and you have to develop as well before you attract. Like you attract who you are, and I don't need that is it a negative connotation? Is that the better that I got, the more input that I got, the more that I attracted people that were like-minded in me. So my circle is pretty broad now because I'm around a lot of people that have stood the test of time I'm not using success in the financial standpoint, but in the success of leadership and self-leadership and family. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
One of the most powerful things I see you do,
Mm-hmm.
and you just described it,
Mm-hmm.
picking up the phone and making that call.
Yeah.
Is it's all initiation.
Yes.
You do, and you initiate excellently. I've seen it growing up. You have no fear of being the first to speak up to deal with any sort of problem.
Yeah.
And you also say, I'm willing to invest 100% without expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
In your relationships.
Yeah.
How do you get to that point?
Yeah.
Where'd you get that mentality?
So I'm going to answer the first question or comment is the expectations. Although you mentioned that I can engage in conflict, but it's still uncomfortable for me. Like that's not something that I strive to do. I just understand that if you avoid certain things, they get worse.
Right.
Right. So that's kind of my mindset of that. But you were asking about giving 100%, and let's talk about expectations for a second. I almost feel like we can set someone up for failure when they don't know our expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you're going into a relationship, the other person has no idea the rules that you set forward to be like, I'm only going to be your friend if you do these certain things. They have no idea what you're talking about. Then next thing you know, you get upset and they're going, what is wrong? So for me, for the people that are in my life that I love and that I care about, family and externally, part of my leadership is about serving others. And there's a lot of ways that you can serve others. It's not being manipulated, but I don't expect anything from you. As an example, is that I'm 100% at your resource in serving you as a dad. That doesn't mean that I'm at your beck and call. I'm going to coach you and I'm going to lead you into certain things, but I give that to you out of love. You don't have to give me anything.
Right.
You don't have to take me out to dinner for love. Your mom's the same way. And let me just be very transparent. For 10 years of our marriage, we've been married 30 years. For 10 years of our marriage, and I look at it as deposits and withdrawals. Like every decision we make is a deposit or a withdrawal. I was literally making withdrawals in our relationship for 10 years. If anybody was going to leave me or gave grounds for a divorce, it was your mom,
Yeah.
right? Not physical abuse by no means, but I'm in a dark place. I'm unhealthy. But for me, now it is all about, in my mindset, I don't get this right all the time, by the way, is that I want to be able to make deposits into their life. And that is what the greatest joy is for me. And getting back to the second book, Chris, the work that this has required is pretty painful. It is that there's an opportunity for me to make a deposit into other people's lives. So that's kind of my mindset on giving 100% and not expecting anything on the back end. Now, let me share this with you. If you have to expect something, and it's by design, by relationship or professional relationship, make sure you clarify that. It's kind of like, a job description. Know what's required of you,
Yeah.
and that's important. And I think that communication piece is just so vital.
I think to piggyback off of what you said, whenever you start giving 100%, you're going to get more out of the other person just naturally.
Yes.
Because if you're serving them, they're going to, by all means, at least want to serve you a little bit,
Yeah,
And
it's reciprocated.
Right. And it's all back to responsibility. You are willing to take on responsibility for your relationships.
Yes.
You say in your mind, I will have flourishing relationships. There is no option, right? That's
100%.
That's dedication. That's responsibility that everyone has the power
Yep.
to achieve,
Agreed.
If you can develop that willpower,
Yep.
you just have to have that mentality. You have to say that to yourself. You
Yep.
have to speak those things in your life. And here's another question to piggyback off that. Give advice on the best way to handle arguments and conflicts with your family, because Lord knows all families have intense arguments at some points, and I want to hear your advice on this, how to handle conflict within the household.
All right. So can we have a little bit of fun with this?
Yes.
So let's use you and me as an example. So you're 19 at the time of this, and there are certain seasons of your life in growing up that obviously there were probably times that you did not like me. Maybe you respected me, but you didn't like me. So there was conflict. And I'm going to use this simple analogy, is that for me being a parent and me understanding leadership, there was no difference in leadership with our relationship. I think part of the challenge for leaders on dealing with conflict is we think we are right. But that is setting ourselves up for failure. So what I have tried to do, and what I do in my professional practice, what I do in my personal relationship, as I have a type A personality, so I don't always get this right, but this is what I'm conscious of. If I have a conflict with you and you do something that drives me crazy, or vice versa, this is my approach, is that although I'm angry, I never approach you while I'm emotional. I don't. It's very, very dangerous. But what I need to do is I need to approach you, and I need to understand where you are. Meaning, Chris, we obviously had a problem. I'm using an example. We obviously had a problem, but I don't understand. But I really want to understand what made you make that decision.
Seeking first to understand.
Now, this is where it becomes painful, is that I have to listen to you to the point that you stop talking. And I have seen over time where I have paused to the point where the other person may say, did you hear me? And I'm like, yes, I'm making sure I understand. And I may repeat back to you after you're done and you feel like you've said your point, and I'm just like, this is what I heard you say back. What I'm doing is I'm allowing you to know that I heard you. And that's a big part of conflict, is not feeling like we're heard. At that point, then I will say to you, can I give you my view of how I saw this? And at times you have cut me off before. And I'll say, Chris, I need you to time out a second. I need you now to listen to me like I listened to you. And to me, that is how you work through the relationship. And let's just be fair. It is a compromise.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to approach it as in going right or being right. It's that's where compromise comes to be, and that's how trust builds relationships. So at work, I almost think that it's the same thing. Is we we have a situation, but remember, in Chris, in part of my work responsibilities, we have to be investigators when things go wrong in EMS or hospital cases. I've never met a person in doing this for over 15 years that intentionally did something to harm someone.
Mm.
It's the same in the relationships. When people make decisions, they don't do it with the aggressive personality to get somebody or to cause harm. So if we approach them and say, their intentions were good, maybe you approach the conversation as, I know your intentions are good. There was a mistake that happened here. I really want to understand what happened. Like, if you lead into that versus being accusatory and you say, you screwed up.
Right.
We can't allow this. I'm going to write you up immediately. Your defenses are up. So always seek first to understand, but truly seek first to understand.
Yeah.
And things happen. People's intentions are really good. So that's kind of my philosophy. And I try to do it. I don't always get it right. I'm going to be clear, but that's my mindset.
Yeah, that's so powerful what you said. There's so much meat there because literally if you just do these two or three things, if you ask the question first,
Yes.
if you're genuinely asking it out of interest, you're
Yes.
trying to understand,
Yes.
and you listen until they stop talking, and then you repeat back to them what they just said. If you do those three things, your relationships are going to be night and day different. Night and day different. I 100% believe it.
And it's hard. Let's just be very, very clear, is that it's very, very difficult. We did a podcast with Chris Brown.
Yeah.
And amazing guy. And
Go check it out. Go check it out.
Definitely check that episode out. Such an amazing leader. But he mentions in that podcast that people want to feel like they have a sticky note on their head, that they want to feel important.
Yeah.
That is respect. If I came to you and I'm not emotional, let's just be clear, and I ask you, it's such a game changer in relationships. And it's a deposit into the relationship. It's not a withdrawal. If you handled it the other way, it's a major withdrawal. If you make enough withdrawals, you have no trust, and you're going to find yourself on an island. Yes, you may have the title, but if you don't make more deposits in the relationships, you're in serious trouble. And I would tell you, from a leader, Chris, when you make a withdrawal, it's bigger than the deposits. You have to make a lot more deposits because the checks you write for withdrawing from their account are much bigger at leadership.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of conversations, you kind of went over this too, but I want to specify this question. You have to deal a lot with paramedics that might have contributed to the death of somebody, who have screwed up and probably are regretting their life right now.
Yeah.
You know, it's an intense situation. You have to go up to them and say, "Hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
Like, tell me what happened. Break this down for me." And they tell you everything is fine, everything's okay.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah.
How do you handle and navigate those truly difficult conversations? Like, I've never had a conversation that difficult where a paramedic has just killed a child accidentally.
Yeah.
And you have to go talk to them after.
Yeah. That is tough. And Lee, who is in this room with me, for years we were on the children's side of that. And knowing that because of the intensity of dealing with children, you make mistakes just because you're stressed out of your mind. And let me just be very, very clear with everyone in here. I have contributed to medical mistakes that cost someone their life. And if you do it long enough, it's going to happen in some form or fashion. My intentions were never to do harm. But Chris, I think it's simple, is that be there for the individual. And the example that you're giving, if there was a resuscitation and someone brings a patient in, and you know, or you just feel like there was an error made, maybe there was an airway, when you approach them, it's got to be soft and it's got to be, are you okay? You got to come in from this seek to understand and to listen. My job at that point is being a resource to help them. It's not about judgment. It's about, let me help you. If you need me to call your supervisor to help you, let's not worry about that. Let's take care of you in the moment. And I think it's two different things. So once you kind of get through crisis mode, then it turns out to, after things have settled and we realize that we made a mistake, our frame of mind is, wow, let's see how that happened. Let's maybe look at what were the causes of that and then preventing it in the future. The leader sets the tone.
Yeah.
You set the tone by approaching the individual. That's why one of my gold standards in doing this for years is that never under any circumstance assume that you know the answer, because you don't.
Yeah.
And even if it is 99% sure, have your boundaries where you run it by someone else to make sure you're thinking clearly, but never assume. That is a very, very dangerous territory.
Yeah. So last question on conflict.
Okay.
I'm reading Dale Carnegie's book right now, How to Win Friends and Influence People, the classic. It's been around for decades. Probably, it's going to be soon 100 years that book's been around, which is nuts.
Insane.
But he gives a story in there, and he's talking about never criticize. That's pretty much what he's saying, is never criticize. He gives a story of a pilot that is a prestigious pilot. He's got tons and tons of credibility, and he test flies these planes, and the mechanic put the wrong fuel in the plane, and the guy takes off and he's flying, and he's about to land the plane or whatever, or he's up in the air and he's going to land soon, and the plane just shuts off.
Okay.
And he by the grace of God lands the plane, but it's a crash landing essentially. And you would think in your mind, he has every single right to go up to that mechanic and be like, what the heck happened? Like, that could be so emotionally charged. That conversation could be so incredibly emotionally charged. It almost costs that pilot his life. But he goes up to the mechanic, and the mechanic is crying.
Yep.
And he gives the mechanic a hug, and he says, you're going to operate on my plane tomorrow just to show that you'll never do this again.
Yeah.
It's that grace. It's that mercy.
Yes.
And that when I read that, I was like, man, I don't know if I would have said the same thing in that circumstance. That is powerful.
It is powerful.
And so I ask you, how do you constructively criticize, and when do you criticize just in general?
Yeah.
And as a leader and in an industry where criticism could potentially be beneficial, especially when you're talking about life and death.
Yeah. That's a loaded question. I hate gossip and I hate criticism in the way that we're accustomed to it. And I'll give you an example. This is, we're in football season right now, right? We're in deep territory. And for entertainment purposes, I like to watch some ESPN in the morning, and they rip these individuals apart, right? They Monday morning quarterback. But if that person was sitting right there, would they have that same conversation? It would be different.
100% different.
Right? It would be different. So for me, my approach is you have to seek first to understand. But here's the magic thing in my view on this, is that sometimes your feedback is not welcomed. So you don't have the right to criticize that individual. That's how I view that. There's a constructive way to do it, and there is a deadly way to do it. And most of what we see is deadly. But for me, the feedback part of criticism, I do more in the design of feedback versus criticism. My performance at work has to be judged by the people that I report to, okay? They don't criticize me. They lead into, hey, we had a situation, walk me through that. They seek first to understand. They give me feedback. That is the difference. So in my opinion, just to be completely transparent, If you're criticizing somebody and you're ripping them and you don't have the gall to approach them,
Yeah.
you don't have a right.
Right.
So that's just my simple analogy. It's a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
It truly, most conflicts are by a misunderstanding, and our job as leaders is to break through that. But understand, feedback is different. I'll give you. It's very intentional. You have to develop it. But I'll give you an example. In some of the work that I've done with teaching is we get evaluated every time we do a lecture. And I've gotten thousands of evaluations. Most of them are very reputable. And then you have an oddball where someone hates you and they rip you. And you look at that, sometimes all we focus is on the criticism. So you have 100 people that say, wow, I give you a 4 out of 5 stars. It was great content. Then you have a one person that rips you. For me, that one person has no credibility, and I ignore it. But we tend to focus on it. But if there's a common theme of, I love your lectures, Eric, but I was confused. If that's the common theme, that's really credible feedback or criticism if you use that. But just people that just fly off the handle, for you to give me I'm just being transparent. For you to give me feedback in my life, you have to be a credible person.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't use it. I really don't. And I'm okay with that because we all have criticism. People have criticism about this podcast. We have the right to do that. But for those that are closest to me, if they give me feedback, I soak it up. I'm like, wow, you're right. That's exactly right. But it's not going to be from a stranger that does that for a living, criticizing.
If you're concerned with building relationships, criticism should be like the last thing on your mind, right?
Yes.
Okay, so changing topics. You recently came across the word almost, and you told me about this. You heard it in a church service, and you told me it had a lot of power behind it,
much power.
and it affected you.
Yeah.
So describe that word and why that had an impact on you.
Wow.
You talk about it in the book, but let's talk about it here too.
I think that has represented my struggle. Is almost, because my philosophy, and we talk about this on the podcast, is the most important person you will ever lead is you. But there's another part of that. It is the hardest thing you will ever do as a leader. Okay? So for me, this is why that meant so much to me, Chris, is that I am very conscientious about a lot of things. My health, my relationships, exercise, what I eat, like things matter to me right now. But every single day, I almost don't follow through. So one of my rituals, and you have a very, very disciplined in rituals in the morning, is exercise is one of those things throughout the day. I've been doing push-ups for years and just trying to be active and mobile. But every day, I talk myself out of it.
Right.
I almost don't do it. And when that message came across about almost is the most disgusting word in the dictionary, that took a hold on me. Because if we look back at our lives, I almost didn't write the second book.
Yeah.
I almost did not make that phone call because I was busy about somebody that wanted to ask me a question. I almost did not engage in a relationship when I had to swallow my pride, knowing that I felt like I was right, but saying being right is not worth destroying the relationship. There's so many things that you almost don't do. Yeah. And if you can battle the word almost, but know that it's real and that you are going to have to fight yourself every day to do the right thing. It's so powerful. I'll give you this analogy. We're teaching a lot of leadership right now across the state. I heard someone say, and I believe it, every one of us have villain tendencies. Every one of us, if we're honest, we're not as good as we think we are. We almost make those decisions to either add value to someone or destroy them, to lift them up or to push them down. It's powerful. I could talk all day on that.
100%. And it's fascinating to me to think of it as winning the day.
Yeah.
If I do 15 minutes of exercise every day, or if I clean up my diet for every day for 1 month, at the end of the 1 month, I'm going to look good. But it's not going to happen unless I focus on the present and win the day.
Yes.
The year is just a theory out there.
Yeah.
The only thing that matters is here and now. It's the day. You have to learn how to win the day. And that's through discipline and dedication and whatnot. That's just so fascinating to me, and it helps me win the day. Like, no matter what I'm doing, I'm getting my push-ups in today.
Yeah.
I have to make that win, because watch what happens a year from now.
Yeah.
I'm like 100 years ahead of everybody else, you know?
Yep. I've heard, go ahead.
No, you're good.
I've heard a speaker say, your success, and I'm recapping what you said. Your success is literally your daily agenda. If you want to know how successful you're going to be in 1 year, show me your calendar and what you're doing every day.
Exactly.
That's brutal.
Oh,
That's truly brutal.
Oh, yeah. I'm fascinated. We talked a little about this on the first episode. I'm fascinated with the light switch that goes off in individuals' heads that cause them to change.
Yeah.
You know, we talked about Granger Smith, and you talk about the guy that had a gun at his head, looks in the mirror, sees your face, and he says, if Eric did this, or if Eric got through this, I can get through this.
Yes.
And similar story with Granger Smith. And so tell me the recent story of the guy at your presentation, your leadership presentation, that said his life was changed after he heard that. I'm just curious to know, how can somebody go to bed one night and wake up and completely do a 180, turn their life around, and they're on another direction? What's the gap there, and how do you separate that gap?
I think it's easy for me.
Or close the gap.
Yeah, I think it's really easy for me, and we'll talk about that message that I got. But I'm going to tell you the danger zone. The danger zone, and I'm using this as a metaphor, is being in water that's lukewarm. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
Okay? But if that water is really hot or freezing, you have to take action. For me, the light switch, Chris, I'm telling you, it literally was this. And why I've been so fanatical about keeping the discipline. I try to. I fail sometimes because it's the human thing. When you are faced in a decision that you literally have the choice to live or die, there is no stronger why in your life. For me, the radical change was pure survival. It wasn't to get anybody to jump on this bandwagon with me, because quite honestly, at that moment, I didn't care. I was trying to survive. And my why was literally as simple as, I have to do this. I have to make this change to live. And back to that person, we did a presentation, and I get word that he wants to send me a message, and in any way we connect, and he sends me this message. It was crazy. Literally, he heard words in that presentation that we did. It was an individual, another individual that was joining me. He was so motivated that he felt like he needed to take massive action. But here's the thing, Chris. He already knew that. He already knew that he needed to do it. But someone was the tipping point. Yeah. It was the one that gave him the encouragement to push over the edge. Our words are so powerful. I want everybody to understand that your words carry great power, and they literally can destroy someone. They literally can, or they can lift someone up. I didn't take that email as an I'm the one. I took that email was, I got to be a piece to encourage that individual who already knew that he needed to make a change, but to be just a fraction to help encourage him to say, you got this. That's what that was about. It was literally the why. He knew it. He knew exactly that he needed to make some changes in my life. But that's the switch, is your why is strong enough. Get out of the friggin' lukewarm water and force yourself, and don't let yourself get away with it. That's what I'm saying. Beat yourself up about it. If you don't follow through today, get up tomorrow in your daily agenda and say, today is the day. And keep trying that. You're going to fail. You're going to miss a meal. You're not going to get it perfect. But every day, wake up with a new energy to say, I'm going to be different today, and I'm starting with this routine.
Yeah. You say, if your why is big enough, you'll develop the discipline needed to make a change.
100%.
To make a change.
100%.
So, you kind of went through your why whenever you had PTSD, and it's life or death. Like, you have to change something. Yeah. You got to go buy the $300 Tony Robbins course. You got to do something, just anything. Yeah. And so that was your why back then. But what's your why now? Yeah. And what causes you to develop discipline day to day to day?
Yeah. It's simple. It's simple for me, Chris, because it's not about me. It's to know now, and I'm 54 years old, to know the power that I have to be something bigger than me. This is not about me. This is not about me. It's using that as a tool, is to encourage other people that they can design the life that they want. Like, literally, that is my why. I almost don't follow through, Chris.
Like we talked about.
I almost do not do the discipline to get in this room, to do the presentations. I have to battle myself. But when I start thinking about the messages that I've received about being part of someone's encouragement, that's why I do it. Yeah. And by the way, when I ordered that program, by the way, it's actually a comical story. Years ago, when this was right before the chaos of post-traumatic stress, not being able to sleep at night, I ordered the Tony Robbins program. It was an infomercial. It was really before cable days, or cable was very light. It wasn't the way that it is today. And I ordered that program after watching it for months. And I go through this program. Like, I'm literally, your mom freaking out. I spent the money. We didn't have the money. And I told her, and she's like, I said, it's 30 days, I'm going to do it. And she says, yes, you're going to do it. You're going to do it every single day. And I did, but here was the thing, Chris. This was the most profound thing, is it was so uncomfortable because I didn't know anybody that was doing personal growth and development. I wasn't going to tell anybody. Like, people were going to judge me. I was very insecure. At the end of that 30-day program, literally, one of the most profound things that was mentioned on that program, and let me lead up to that. I'm doing the exercises and I'm doing the journaling, and I'm like, man, at the end of this 30 days, I'm going to get the secret sauce at day 30. I'm fired up. I'm like, 2 days to go, 1 day to go, and I finally get there. And this is what he says. Today, these are my words. Today is not the end, but it's the beginning. Yeah. You now have created the momentum to understand that it's the incremental changes that you make, compounded consistency, that is going to change your life. It is little deposits that build compound interest like investments that has made the difference.
Yeah. I know we talked a lot about faith in the first episode, but I think it can be a huge paramount why for people. It can give you a foundation for living. It can give you reason for living. It can give you purpose. And so faith, it gives you a foundation, a philosophy, like I was saying, to deal with evil versus good, to deal with the problem of an innocent child getting killed or whatnot. And I think every healthcare provider has to come to terms with the problem of evil to some extent in their mind, and faith can be a massive gateway to that. And you and Mom raised Rachel and I in church. Y'all always treated faith with the utmost importance. We'd pray before every meal. It was a big thing in our household. And so how has faith contributed to your healing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This answer, and I don't want to offend anybody, but you've asked me the question, and I'm going to tell you, is when the experience happened,
Mhm.
and as I said in episode 1, that I felt like God really spoke to me, but in the form of pressure and overtaking my mind, not hearing verbally his voice, is that you're not going to die. And then over a period of time, I started feeling like I'm going to do something with this. Trust me. Trust me.
Mhm.
And I've relied on that many, many times. And why faith has been such a big part of that is that I knew that it happened for a reason. And now that's why I call it a gift. I believe that God gave me the gift to be able to go through that struggle to help other people.
Yeah.
And I've never had a peace ever in my life during the worst time of your mom and I's life when I was recovering, that I was going to be okay, that there was going to be a victory out of this. And that has stood the test of time. Why it's so important to me, Chris, is because I literally was on the brink of ending my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It means everything to me. I don't have to project it. I hope people know it by just the way that I walk around. But I as long as I'm on this earth, I'm going to use this vehicle to help other people. And
Yeah.
that's my mindset. That's why faith has been such a big part of me, and the stories can go on and on about that. But that's the root.
Yeah, and I encourage people, man, if you don't have a faith, consider Christianity, look into it, because it can give you a why, like I was saying. It can give you a purpose. And
Sure.
I want you to tell the story of how you wrote the suicide chapter in this in your second book.
Yeah.
Because he had a chapter about suicide, and it's only about suicide, but the story of how you wrote that was powerful, and I think it relates to faith.
Yeah. I've never said this yet. So I've never spoke about it. So this is the first time. I don't know what sort of emotions are going to be. But during the writing and the chapters of the book, I felt like something was missing. And because I've had so many people in my life that I was close to that died by suicide, I felt like I was ignoring the elephant in the room. Like I really did, but I didn't know what to do with it. Like I knew it was there, but how do you write about it?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm cutting grass at home, at our farm. As I said to you, sometimes just like things overtake my mind, and I get a thought. And the thought is, you need to write a chapter about suicide. I've thought about that before, and I was like, okay. And then it came to me. It's like, you need to write a letter to someone. And I was like, wow, okay. So I'm thinking about that. I need to write a letter to someone that's thinking about taking their own life. And now the pressure is intense. I'm rolling on the mower. I'm literally, it's hot outside, the motor's rolling, and it gets intense. And I'm like, I gotta get up and go grab my phone. So literally, I shut the mower down.
Mm-hmm.
I get my phone, and I start writing a letter to someone that is thinking about taking their life.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote for like 5 minutes, pure dictating the whole time. And I'm looking at my phone, and I'm just speaking, and the words are just flying out of my mouth. And then after that, I'm like, okay, I feel like I got everything that I need. So, I make sure it's saved, of course. I get back on my mower. I cut the grass. Thinking about it a little bit. After I cut the grass, I don't know, I was on the mower about an hour. And I'm like, man, what was that? And I could not remember what I wrote. I literally...
You had no idea.
I had no idea. I'm not even exaggerating. I had no idea what I wrote. I went back and read it in tears.
Yeah.
Completely supernatural experience.
Yeah.
And that was so powerful to me. So for those of you that have read that chapter, understand, to me, that was a supernatural experience because
Yeah.
I could not duplicate it. Even to this day, Chris, I cannot tell you what that was all about.
Yeah.
It's powerful, so powerful.
That's unreal. So my next, the next thing is, I just want to explain like the sum of your book, the sum of this new book, the essence of this new book is victimhood versus victory.
Yeah.
Whether you're going to be a victim to your life or whether you're going to find victory over your life.
Yeah.
I think that's truly what this book is about.
Okay.
And taking charge and being an active participant in
Yeah.
your life, and instead of just sitting around and letting life happen to you. So would you describe the contrast that you would like everyone to know between victimhood and victory, and how that kind of relates to this new book?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm an avid reader and listener of books. And this is where I can sum it up, is a great friend of mine, we would share different books back and forth. He said, hey, there's this new book out that, this is his words, this is going to mess you up. And I was like, all right, what is it? I'm ready. And he says, this book is called Extreme Ownership. And it's by Jocko. He has a podcast. And I listened to the audio, and it's literally the two authors reading it. And these are Navy SEAL guys, like intense voices. That was the first time, although I felt it and I may have heard pieces of it, but the way they articulated it was, you must own everything in your life. And it's a leadership principle concept book. Well, that stirred an incredible amount of emotion in me. And I'm like, okay, you need to own it. And then it got deeper. It's that, Eric, you need to own everything. You need to own this post-traumatic stress experience. You have to own and take ownership of the relationships that you have at work, with your wife, with your kids. You better own it. Yes, you did not cause the event to happen to you, but by gosh, you better man up and you better take responsibility for it. Life-changing. And for me, Chris, is I've never been hung up on the circumstance is what it is. It is. You can't change that. But my gosh, you can change the way that you approach this. Get up and fight, and don't let anybody tell you what you can and can't do. And that's a victim, that's a victor mindset. Is I'm going to fight until I have no breath.
Yeah.
And that's it's almost like an athlete. You're not going to tell me that I can't make this situation better. And then it came with framing questions. It's like I was blaming the service at first. Well, it's their fault. No, it's not. It happened. I was in a position of service. These things happen. But I can tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up with a plan, and I'm going to say, what can I do from this situation to become a better person? I started empowering myself with positive questions, and I went to work. And that is what I struggle with. I'm just going to be very transparent, is when someone has an event and they let it defeat them.
Yeah.
They're literally surrendering their whole life. I've heard some people are dead, but they're still breathing.
Yeah.
Get up and fight for you. Find a why that's big enough. Your circumstances do not define you. And this is how ingrained this is to me, Chris, is that, let's say accolades as an example. I don't even focus on them. Like, it is what it is. It's like if I accomplish something, that doesn't define me. Who am I? I'm going to get back to work the next day. The athletes that win a professional game, the Super Bowl as an example, whoever wins the Super Bowl, they don't just rest for year after year and say, I won 2014 or 2024 Super Bowl. What do? They get up and they go to the gym the next day.
Right.
That's the mindset.
Right. It's literally a natural law of, if you leave something to itself, it's going to get worse. You know?
Talk to me. Preach on. It's true.
If you don't mow the grass, guess what's going to happen? A daggum forest is going to appear.
100%.
If you leave things to itself, chaos is going to erupt.
Yep.
The same things with humans.
Yes.
If you don't become an active participant in your life, chaos is going to erupt. You're going to crumble beneath your circumstances,
Yes.
et cetera, et cetera. And so you just kind of touched on this on how to handle success, really, and get back up. Even though you got the accolade, you have to keep having the daily discipline to carry out your habits and whatnot, and your success is just going to compound.
Yeah.
So how do you define success nowadays
Mm-hmm.
versus when you were a younger paramedic, and you've got the accolades, you've got
Mm-hmm.
a good salary and all the things. And
Yeah.
what's success mean to you today versus back then?
Yeah, it's not achieving the goal. It's not achieving the end. It is the growth that comes. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ready to deal with challenges of tomorrow, but if I continue to grow, I'm going to be better equipped. So it really comes down to my disciplines. I don't even like to talk about accolades. It makes me very uncomfortable when I go to a conference and they list these things, and you're just like, oh my gosh, my whole thing when I get up in front of the room is like, please lower your expectations, because I'm just a dude. I struggle just like every one of you in the room. And then I kind of lead into it. So my philosophy on success and failures is almost identical. Is that I celebrate my successes for a short period of time. Let's just, for the metaphor, use it for a 24-hour period or a week period, whatever. The same as failure. We all fail. I mean, if we're not, like, this is a risk to do a podcast, there were some failures along the way. I get back up the next day and try to do it. Like, so I'm never arriving. So if I succeed or I fail, the same rules apply. Is that evaluate it, either go celebrate or pick yourself up and go into the next day. It's all my daily agenda. It truly is. It's truly about intentionally growing every single time. Literally, I've already moved on from this book, by the way. Like, I don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I have to think about it because we're doing things like this and I'm speaking, but that's not who I am. I'm like creating what's the next phase of my life. What do I want to accomplish? I'm already moving there. And so it's kind of like keeping a level playing field is celebrate, or if you fail, pick yourself up and try to become better the next day.
Yeah.
That's my philosophy.
Being growth oriented.
It's it.
Yeah. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Dad. And I got one more question.
Lay it on
And
me.
it's for all you young people out there, okay? It's for all those young people like myself. What is your biggest piece of advice to young people, late adolescent, young adult, not sure really what they want to do maybe? Maybe it's EMS, maybe it's not. What's your advice to them?
The advice I'm going to give is the advice that I try to follow. Okay? It's no different for whatever age. This is what I've learned being 54 years old. I have less answers. I'm less sure that I know the answers now. Like, really, it is. I'm comfortable with that. Surround yourself with people that are better than you. Mm-hmm. Really, don't be intimidated by that. Value that. That is a gift. Ask a lot of questions to people. Don't think that you need to dominate the conversation. Be inquisitive. That's why I love this podcast. And by all means, set goals. I think they're important. But grow. Intentionally feed your mind and make yourself better every day. The residual impact of making deposits and feeling that you don't have the answers but you're searching for them every day and being growth oriented truly is the secret to life, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gents, if you didn't get something out of this podcast, you need to go listen to it again. You need to go listen to it again because this was fun. And I'm so glad we got to do this. It was a pleasure interviewing you, Dad.
Yeah, Chris.
Talking to you.
I'm excited.
And the future holds a lot.
Well, I'm grateful for this, and for those that tuned in to the TEMSEA Leadership Podcast. We want you to subscribe. Please share this episode with others, and we're grateful that you joined us today.
Remember, the most important person you're ever going to lead is you.
Thanks for joining us on the TEMSEA Leadership Podcast today. We sincerely appreciate it. If you want more information about how to find this book, please visit ericclaus.com. We want to leave you with this, as we do with every episode. The most important person that you're ever going to lead is you. We look forward to visiting with you again soon.